Hi, it's Friday, July 25th, and I continue to read and wonder my way through Matthew's Gospel. And today we're going to finish off Matthew chapter 20 by reading verses 29 to 34. Yesterday we heard a charming little story about seating arrangements and where James and John were going to get to sit. Their mom actually went to Jesus and said, "Hey, in your glory and all that kind of stuff, can my boys sit to the right and to the left of you?" And Jesus then went on to talk about how it's not like that. Even to the other disciples who are like, "Hey, what do you mean they're getting special treatment?" He had to explain again, it's not like that. And again, remind them that the last will be first, and the greatest will actually be the one who's revealed to be the least, the servant. All that stuff. And then this is what happens. So here we go. Matthew 20, verses 29 to 34. As they were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed Jesus. There were two blind men sitting by the roadside. When they heard that Jesus was passing by, they shouted, "Lord, have mercy on us, son of David." The crowd sternly ordered them to be quiet. They shouted even more loudly, "Have mercy on us, Lord, son of David." Jesus stood still and called them, saying, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Lord, let our eyes be opened." And moved with compassion, Jesus touched their eyes. Immediately they regained their sight and followed him. So, a Jesus healing story. We've heard them before. Miracles. We've had the blind regain their sight. And I'm trying to think of it. I might be wrong. It's usually people regaining their sight, not somebody who was born blind getting sight for the first time, but it's somebody who had it, has lost it, and it's now regained. Is that significant? Does that matter? I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Whenever there's a healing story for me, that my mind starts to go into what is what's essentially an ableism, and it's I don't mean it to be, but it is. So when I hear about somebody getting their sight, I think, yay, that's fantastic. Of course, that's great because they don't want to be blind. Um, I assume that everybody is like me, which is to say, I like the fact that I can see. I mean, I consider that to be the norm. Pardon me for the pun, it being my name, but the norm is to be able to see, is to be able to hear, is to be able to speak, is to be able to taste, it's to be able to have mobility, walk around, run around, do all those things, whatever. That to me is normal. So if I lose one of those things, then I am suffering somehow. I am lesser because it's hard for me to imagine being blind, and if I think about it, I would feel less myself because I value my sight. But then that turns me into, I then think a blind person is less than me because I wouldn't want to be blind. So it's not that I'm the lucky one. I'm also the normal one, the fulfilled one, the whole one. They're not. So whenever Jesus comes by and gives somebody sight, you go, "Oh man!" So it's if to say this person had a deficit, and Jesus has fixed it. They were being punished, and Jesus has forgiven them. And I know that's not always the language, but it is sometimes the language. Jesus even will challenge people on that. It's not the language he uses, but it is for others. Um, So it is interesting to me that these people regain their sight. They're not given sight for the first time. So for them, there may be a sense of loss. They had sight, they no longer do. They would like to have it back. I note that in all of the healing stories, and I really do believe it's all the healing stories, Jesus asks people if they want to be healed, if they want to see, if they want to hear, if they want to, whatever it is that he does before he intervenes, he asks if they want them to. Because if you can climb out of your own uh, central focus where everything is, basically seen through your eyes. There, I'm using the language, but that you are the norm and everything's compared to your condition. If you can get out of that, we are wonderfully, beautifully, magnificently created by God, each and every one of us. Right? I am not lesser because my body type is different than somebody else's. I am not better either. We're just different. Somebody who is created without sight is not a lesser person than I, and they may not want to have sight. You go, well, that's crazy. Of course you want to have sight. Well, no, if you've always had it, you lose it. Yes, you might, but if you don't have it, you don't see it as a deficit necessarily. You might, but you don't necessarily. So it's always tricky when Jesus heals somebody. And I've related this before, probably when talking about a healing story. But it was George Shearing, and it was a piano player, blind, brilliant piano player. And I was a young man when I had heard that it was possible for George Shearing to have sight. There was an operation that could be done that would have restored his optical nerves or whatever it was, and he would be able to see. And he said no. So the story goes. He turned it down. He had a good life. He liked life. The way that he lived, he believed, the way that he engaged with the world allowed him to be the musician that he was. That if he could see, he was worried that then he would lose that balance that allowed him to create the incredible music he did. So he felt he was more creative because he couldn't see, and he did not therefore want to see. He thought he was wonderfully, beautifully made. Again, as at that time as a teenager who could see, the thought of not being able to see, oh my God, he must be crazy. But in fact, that is his choice because he saw himself as wonderfully, beautifully created. He wasn't lacking, he wasn't lesser. He was exactly who he was. I have friends who have a variety of what we call disabilities, and fair to call them that. And they don't think of themselves as lesser human beings. The world sometimes treats them that way, but they don't. Um, and you learn from that. I've related. I know I've done this. Her name's gone from my mind right now. Anyway, wrote a really fascinating study about Martha's Vineyard, which is an island, a community. But there was a time, and it was like early in the last century, first part of the night of the 20th century in the 1900s, where it was a community of deaf people. Everybody there was deaf, or they were families of deaf folk, and so everybody signed, everybody, and apparently in this community, being deaf was like being blonde. Being able to hear was like being a brunette. Uh, they were just different types of people, and nobody thought of people as being less or disabled. They just all were who they were, and everybody apparently could sign and communicate. Some people could hear, some people couldn't, but that's just who they were. And eventually, that community will be gone, and yeah, and the world moves on and that kinds of. But just to look at that time and space and realize, yeah, what was often considered to be a disability, there was just a differing ability. People were just different. So I guess that's why I don't know how I went down this rabbit hole, but it has more to do with that idea of their regaining their sight, not gaining for the first time, regaining. So they had a thing that they had lost and they would like it back. But Jesus asked them before that happens. I find that interesting, and it invites me to think about ability, disability, um, gifts, and creation. Whatever you feel God's hand is in your coming to be. I mean, I'm a very big believer in evolution. I trust science and evolution, but I believe that God's act of creation is manifest in evolution. So I do believe that I am wonderfully created by God, and I have also evolved to be who I am. So every one of us, and so that is my challenge, is to understand that and to appreciate the gifts and to not be condescending or patronizing, which it's always easy to do. And as much as that's, being condescending and being patronizing is rude to people, and so it's experienced as a rudeness. But never mind the rude, it makes it difficult for you, the one who's condescending or the one who's patronizing, to fully appreciate what's being offered by the other person because they're not as good as you. Oh, I'm not, I don't mean as good. I just want to make, I know, but inside, they're not as good as you. At least maybe I'm speaking more to myself. And so you don't listen to them. You don't give the same gravity unless you stop and check yourself and go, oh, wait a minute. Just because that person stammers doesn't mean their idea isn't brilliant. But there are times when somebody has difficulty getting the words out that my mind can want to raise a head and go, okay, I don't want to listen to, I don't want to listen to this person anymore. I'm done. Why? If it was a really good idea, it would come out clearly, would it? Um, there are some people who think I use my hands too much. And it can be distracting. You should see me preach, and I do. My hands, I don't know, they weren't always that way, but they are all the time. And so there are people go, that's really, really distracting, Norm. And I suspect there are some people who find it hard to listen to me because my hands are always going, and so they shut me out. Now, one, I could stop moving my hands around so much. I got it. They also could learn to listen to me and get over the fact that they find my hand movements distracting. I find them comforting and expressive. Applying that to me, I can also apply that to other people who do not express themselves the same way that I do because they move differently or they sound different than I do or they have more difficulty getting the words out. Sometimes they use references that I don't quite understand. I'm saying, ability, disability, we are all wonderfully created. We all have gifts. And when we create a hierarchy, when we imagine ourselves on the top and everybody else is trying to be more like us in our heads, and when they're not like us, but we begin to dismiss their wisdom and their experience and their ideas. And I do believe we do that at our risk. We lose when we do that. So it's not just about being polite, but it's also about being aware of the resources that are all around you. So that goes on. That clicks in my head right away. And the other piece for this, and it's sort of really where I started until that last thing hit me. Um, Two blind men on the roadside. Interesting, there's two of them. Don't know why. Well, maybe because historically, maybe there really were two. Um, but sometimes there's one. But here there's two, and we've had this happen before. They're crying out, "Lord, have mercy on us, son of David." They're appealing to the sort of Jewish identity of Jesus, recognizing him as Messiah. Lord, have mercy on us, son of David. And the crowd tells him to shut up. Isn't that interesting? Crowd tells them to be quiet. Why? I think we're invited to wonder about that because this is not the only time we hear about the crowd telling people to be quiet. People who are calling out for Jesus' help, Jesus' attention. People tell them to be quiet. Um, you wonder, okay, why? Why there do they want them to be quiet? Because they're annoying. Because you shouldn't be asking Jesus for help. What do you exactly think that is? And let's pull it out of history for a moment. In our lives today, how often do we hear people asking for help and our first one is, could you just shut up? Please be quiet. I don't want to hear about it. How often do we ourselves think, I'd ask for help, but nobody wants to hear from me. I, I will very often on Monday night services, which are a much more informal thing I run called Ulterior Worship. Every other week, I have a Monday night service, and I will invite people as we go into a time of silent prayer for a couple minutes. I'll ask people anything you want to lift up. The rest of us can, include in our prayers, and people will mention some things. And then someone will say, "Well, I'm having a problem with such a," and I'll put that. But you know what? It doesn't compare to what's going on in Gaza, Ukraine. They'll go through all sorts of things, and basically what they'll say is, "Yeah, this is hard for me, but I realize it's not nearly as bad as other stuff in the world. So maybe I should just be quiet about it." They're almost inviting us as a crowd to say to them, "Shut up! No, no, I don't have time to pray for that." And it's funny when we do that. Not only do we stifle ourselves and I think hold ourselves back from a full relationship with God, but we also misrepresent God. So the first part, when I say we hold ourselves back from a full relationship with God, um, my wife and I will joke about it, uh, but my wife knows what's annoying me, and my wife knows what's bugging me, and my wife will know about my little petty joys and my little petty frustrations. I mean, I don't go on and on and on about it. I say, but if you're in a real relationship, then you're free to share, and it's okay to share what you feel. It's not that if I'm being frustrated with something or I'm afraid of something that wouldn't frighten anybody else, um, I don't have to keep it to myself. I don't necessarily have to expect you to fix it. I just very recently celebrated the life of just an incredible woman. But it came up because everybody who knew her kids, her friends, she had an incredible fear of frogs. Just frogs froze her. And for most of us, you're like, that's ridiculous. And I'll bet there were a number of people sort of who knew her but didn't know about her fear of frogs. But all of her friends absolutely did. Why? Well, she wouldn't tell the other people because like that's just it's silly and it doesn't no it does not compare to a fear of the dark, a fear of this. And it's a fear of frogs. And there's so many other things to really be afraid of. You heard see what's going on in the economy. Do you know that there are people who are starving? My fear of frogs doesn't count. So no, you don't tell everybody about it, but you do tell those closest to you. Well, God is close to me. God invites me to be close to God, and we're meant to have this intimate relationship. You can't really know me unless you know that I'm afraid of frogs. Well, I'm not. This person was. You can't really know me unless you know that I am still ticked off about that thing that happened an hour ago and that it's not a big deal, but it's still bugging me. And if I share it with you, I let it go a little bit. And if I share it with you, you get to know a little bit about me. And it may not be my proudest moment. It may reveal me to be a petty person, but it reveals me. So I want to be in that kind of relationship with God where I tell God what's going on. I don't expect God to get rid of frogs. I don't expect God to give me, an afternoon at work free of any kind of conflict or difficulty. No, that's what life is. I get it. But if you know me, it's the kind of thing I would tell my wife. I would tell my best friend. Therefore I do tell God. So if I want help, even if I don't deserve it compared to like my need isn't as dire as the rest of the world's, no, I'm not going to shut up about it. I am going to tell God about it. And the thing is, when you tell me to shut up and don't tell God, yes, it can be because I'm annoying you, but it's probably because you wish God would pay attention to you and you don't want to be in competition with me. Or you don't want to waste God's time on something so small and trivial because we need God to be working on the big things. So what that does is that sets up a view of God a God who is limited, as if to say God could only do 100 things today. And if God wastes time doing one thing for you, then there's only 99 important things that God can do. And if God does 99 little things for little people with their petty little stuff, then God only has time to do one more big thing. So this suggests that there is a God who gets limited, a God who can be tired out. But this is not the God of Abraham. This is not the God that is revealed in Jesus. The God who is revealed in Jesus is grace, is compassion, is love, and functions as abundance, not just with a theory of abundance, but is abundance. God has time for the pettiness and the little things and the big things. And the other things, when we say, well, God can only do so many things, so don't waste your time with your little things, so God can focus on the big ones, we sometimes sort of also then can kind of say, well, if it wasn't for all the little things we keep asking God to do, then God would have solved the big things, don't you think? I mean, God would bring peace to Gaza and justice if we weren't so busy worrying about little Bobby's baseball game and the pain in Marg's leg. And we reinforce this idea that the only one who can actually bring peace there will be God. So you know what? I'll shut up about my leg and about the baseball game. So God, you can get on with fixing Gaza. Well, Norm, do you want to see if you can do anything to help bring peace to Gaza? No, I've stopped complaining about my leg. That should be enough. Let God do it. Um, we hand the big things over to God and we keep the little things to ourselves instead of sharing all of that. Because the thing is, God, for me, when I read this, I'm reminded that God absolutely needs to know, and can help with my little things that hardly compare to the big things. But also, I can have an impact on the big things. And sometimes I wonder how, and then that becomes my prayer is God, how can I? And it might be something that I do with my neighbor. It might be something that I do in my neighborhood, in my city. It might be standing in solidarity against protecting those who are suffering from Islamophobia. It might be standing at a synagogue and protecting those who are being who are experiencing horrific anti-Semitism. It might be connecting my friends who would never imagine that they could talk because the way of the world has divided them. There's many things I can do. It might just be that I pray for all sides in a conflict instead of just the one where I'm kind of drawn to a team. There's all manner of things I can do. And I do that because I realize that as much as I want God involved in the small things, God is also inviting me to be part of the large things. And that's because we're in all of this together. And this is because God is not just functioning out of a theory of abundance, but God is abundance. And I'm pretty sure that's not what Matthew was writing about when he wrote the story about the two blind men in the crowd asking him to be quiet. Well, that's certainly what happens to me when I think about them. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it to you for the weekend. So let me offer a prayer and we'll carry on. Let us pray. Loving God, thank you for this time of wonder. This opportunity to hear more than the text might offer right away, to bring questions, and in the questions and in the wondering, to hear your voice. God, as we hear your voice, may we be drawn to it, and may we continue to grow in faith because of it. We pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, through the Holy Spirit. Amen. Now that's enough for me today, but I do look forward to seeing you on Monday. Until I get to see you, God bless you. Please know that God sees you, knows you, and loves you exactly as you are, exactly where you are. But God's love doesn't just sit there with you, it actually grows within you and it moves through you. So wherever you go, you share that love. So as much as you are blessed, you are a blessing as well. So thank you for being you. God bless you. See you Monday.